Now, last thing done, I forgot to turn on our WRNR TV on YouTube. It's on now, though. Hey, let's introduce you to our cast of characters this morning. I'll begin from my left and move around the table to the right, which would be pretty much politically opposite of what our viewpoints will be today here. Senator Craig Blair, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming in, sir. Direct from Charleston, if I recall, along the long drive yesterday, right?
Yep.
And Delegate Paul Espinosa, good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Rob. Good to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
Great to have you with us here this morning. Of course, Senator Blair, Senate Finance Chair. Delegate Espinosa is the Education Chair. With us also on the program, two who are running for office in the House of Delegates. Former Delegate John Doyle. JD, how are you, buddy?
Excellent. Yourselves?
Oh, I have zero complaints. And Sammi Brown, who's also running in the House of Delegates, too. Sammi, good morning to you.
Good morning, Rob. In for David Welch.
Might I say, Sammi was first in the room, and she did the ultimate power move of taking Welch's co-chair, which he'll be very happy about, too, I might add. I think he has one of those old man crushes on you. You know what I mean?
That's so sweet. I'll take it.
Our producer this morning is Sherry Dieter Davis, and our fabulous intern in charge of all social media is soon-to-be sophomore Potomac State, Savon Hunter. Good morning, Savon.
Good morning.
How you been?
I'm great today.
Is this your first show without Welch on hand?
I think so.
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, she's in for a treat.
She totally is. Yeah, Savon will be handling all the social media posts today, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. She handles the pictures and the captions, and she's marvelous at it.
I could tell that you guys brought someone on because all of a sudden you have an Instagram account.
Yes.
There's no way that you or Dave would have done Instagram. So kudos to you, girlfriend.
We did Facebook and we did Twitter, and when Savon started, I said, "What?" Because this is what she's kind of majoring in, right? What's your major called, Savon?
Strategic communication.
That's right.
Strategic communications
Me
is
and
what
you.
it's called now. Okay, so I said, well, what suggestions would you make for the program to change some things of what we're doing right now in our social media presence? She said, well, I could start an Instagram account for you guys. And I said, done. You do it. You're in charge. So when Savon leaves in a month to go back to college, we'll have the same social media presence we had before. So I'm looking for another intern. You don't have to be as great as Savon has been, but if you're like 50% of Savon, that's still
just upload Instagram. That's all you've got to do.
Yes. Savon, will you be coming back during school breaks, by the way? A couple of days here and there?
Yeah, if you want me to come
I'm
back, I'll
kind
come.
of begging right now. In case you can't tell.
We use a similar approach in House education. We typically have an intern assigned to our committee, and one of the first questions I typically ask, I said, "How are you on social media?" Which normally for most young folks, they're they're pretty well versed. I'm like, okay, take lots of pictures and post lots of things, and just to obviously keep folks aware of what's going on, because more and more folks, especially a lot of the younger demographics, that's how they like to get their news.
That's the only way they get their news.
Here's the key to social media: good pictures, witty captions.
I
Post.
agree.
That's it.
And it helps if you're attractive. The person who's been photographed, if you're photogenic, that doesn't hurt either. Which eliminates all old men like me.
Yeah, I'm out.
I was going to say, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Gentlemen, on a serious note here, some of the guests we'll have this morning: Senate Judiciary Chair Charlie Trump in the 8:30 segment on the telephone, and Tom Lange, who is on the School Building Authority, resigned yesterday with some philosophical differences. Let me start with the Education Chair, who happens to be in the room, Paul Espinosa. Paul, do you have any inside information on this, or did you know this was coming?
I did not. I have had conversations with Tom over the last several years, and certainly have welcomed his participation in the School Building Authority. Frankly, anytime the Eastern Panhandle has representation on our various boards and commissions, I think that's a good thing, and so I've certainly appreciated his long-time participation in the School Building Authority. I do know, and again, I'm looking forward to hearing his comments, because I have not had an opportunity to speak directly with Tom. I actually attempted to reach out. I thought I had a cell phone number for him, but I didn't see it, or I wasn't able to find it, but I look forward to hearing what he has to say. In our GATE committee, our Government Accountability, Transparency, and Efficiency Committee, on which I serve, Senator Blair, I believe you serve on that committee as well, do you not? I know there's been some discussions, considerable discussions, about the School Building Authority in general, and how one, how they're managing their projects. In particular, it seems that there was there seemed to be some considerable waste in hiring project managers, construction managers, even for relatively small jobs. And I think what we were hearing from a lot of our school districts is that while on very large projects, like a Spring Mills High School, for example, you may well need a construction manager or a project manager. In most cases, for a lot of the smaller projects, a clerk of the works, for example, which is a typical position that most school districts have, can handle those. I think there was another issue that I've read about where members of the school building authority had been going around visiting schools, districts on their own. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with that, but I know that that was one of the things that seemed to be simmering in some of the discussions on the school building authority, is to what extent these members should be going out on their own and meeting with school districts, and perhaps Tom can shed some more light on that.
And that can create the appearance of conflict of interest.
Right.
Maybe there isn't one
Right.
in a particular case, but it appears there could be.
Yep. And again, I applaud all members for being engaged, trying to learn as much as they can. I mean, I certainly, as a member of the House Education Committee, I certainly try to get out in the school system as much as I can. As you're well aware, Rob, I substitute taught this last fall. I think I was in 20 different schools, but I think there was some concern that perhaps some of these members were going out, maybe guiding the applications a little bit too much. But again, certainly look forward to hearing directly from Tom as to what he understands, or what was the rationale for his departure.
And I would encourage all four of our panelists, by the way, if you have a thought on the topics, don't wait for me to call in. Just jump in and give it, by the way.
There's no problem with that, Rob. We've got this.
It's a free-for-all
For
format here.
heaven's sake, Rob, look who you got here.
I just wanted to make sure you're not on your best behavior this morning. We'll get into the stuff that's going on in the House Judiciary Committee and impeachment of the Supreme Court and whatever coming up as we start the 8:30 segment with Senator Charlie Trump, who's the chair of the Judiciary Committee. I want to go to the HEPC situation right now. Mary Hendricks, the president of Shepherd University, yesterday, I think the quote was, a hostile takeover by WVU of the state's education system. And I've talked to Delegate Mike Folk before, earlier this week, who made mention of the same fact that WVU is essentially trying to take over the state's education system at the collegiate level and above. John, I know you know Mary Hendricks very well, and you're very much in tune with Shepherd University. What do you know about this?
Well, and not only that, I've been on the phone with other people around the state on this issue. There have been rumors for years that Gordon Gee essentially wants to be the czar of higher education in West Virginia. I've been reluctant to say that publicly up until now. But what happened with the Higher Education Policy Commission on Tuesday, I regard as clear and convincing evidence that that is the case.
Can you please relate what you're talking about?
Well, in March, Chancellor Paul Hill said that he was going to retire, but he offered to stay until his successor was selected and installed. Then Governor Jim Justice announced the formation of this Blue Ribbon Commission on Higher Education. And immediately there were some red flags up in my mind. Again, if you've got this background where the rumors have been going around that there's going to be a takeover, this could be a subterfuge for that. I say could be. I don't know. Or didn't know. At any rate, so the makeup of that policy, that Blue Ribbon Commission is heavily oriented toward WVU with a little bit on the side of Marshall, and that's pretty much it. So anyway, then on Tuesday, the Higher Education Policy Commission essentially fired Chancellor Hill and replaced him with the current president of WVU Tech, which is a branch of WVU, and I'm trying to remember her name.
Carol Lange, I think.
Yeah.
Or Long.
Carolyn Long, right. Anyway, she came from WVU to head that institution, and she is considered an ally of President Gee. So at any rate, and now they're paying Chancellor Hill, as on Monday he'll be former Chancellor Hill, his $227,000 salary for 6 months while they're paying Carolyn Long $227,000. It seems to me that yes, if you're going to have this Blue Ribbon Commission, and maybe you don't have the Higher Education Policy Commission later on, leave the current leadership in place until you make a decision as to whether or not you're going to have that entity. That would seem to me logical, but it wasn't, and to me, it was blatant.
So right off the bat, if we want to hyper-localize this, what does this do to affect Shepherd? This is more for our listenership, by the way.
Well, there had been a proposal, and I commend both of our legislators here in the room for the decision of the legislature to say to higher education, you need a funding formula. There has never been a funding formula for higher education in West Virginia, good, bad, or indifferent. It's basically been whatever your institution's base budget was 40 years ago, that's what you get. And so a school like Shepherd, which has grown considerably, has gotten to the point where it's seriously underfunded. And there was a proposal. There have been several different proposals adopted by the legislature over the years, none of which have ever been funded. My last year in 2012, the legislature adopted a plan for performance funding. It's on the books, but no money's ever been put into it.
Well, to provide a little additional background, Rob, and then I'll be happy to respond directly to your question. A couple things that I'll remind you or the panel and your listeners. In 2017, the legislature enacted two key pieces of legislation that really provided additional autonomy to our local institutions, our four-year institutions in particular. House Bill 2542, but particularly House Bill 2815, really empowered the governor-appointed boards of these four-year institutions, including Shepherd, to make much more decision-making locally. Essentially, the HEPC would be relegated more to a coordination role. They would also look to confirm the legality of the actions that the boards were taking. But aside from that, these governor-appointed boards really gained a lot of autonomy. Included in House Bill 2815 was the provision that John referenced that directed the HEPC to present a proposed funding formula to the legislature. That assignment was actually scheduled to be presented to the legislature by January 1st of this year. So unfortunately, they've already missed that deadline. However, we did get a preliminary proposal soon after the start of the I think it was actually back in January, very preliminary response to that request. We did receive a preliminary proposal in May, and then with the promise that we'd receive a final proposal in September. Clearly, the institutions that, at least under the preliminary proposed proposal, stand to lose the most have been very vocal in their opposition. Namely, WVU, at least under the proposed formula, would lose significantly under that formula. WVU Tech, that our new interim chancellor previously led as president, and also Glenville State University was the third that, at least under that proposed proposal, and keep in mind, any proposal ultimately has to be acted on by the legislature, but that was at least the preliminary proposal. Dr. Gee and others were very vocal in their opposition to the approach the HEPC was taken, and frankly,
because WVU would lose funding.
Well, I think that's a fair assumption, because it essentially would have looked at enrollment, it would have looked at the number of degrees you're awarding, other factors. Again, one of our big goals in including that provision in House Bill 2815 was to finally bring some rationality to how we fund our higher education institutions. Well, again, there's been very vocal, very open opposition to that plan, and I share the concerns that have been expressed by many of our regional college and university presidents that at least the appearance here is that there's an effort to circumvent the work that I believe was really being conducted by the HEPC in a very thoughtful, deliberative manner, in a very impartial manner. And I've expressed very publicly that I just don't understand why the HEPC would, one, duplicate the salaries that John described, and two, why would you place in charge an individual who I have a great deal of regard for. Carolyn Lange has been an excellent president for WVU Tech, but why would you create the clear appearance of bias? And I'm being kind there. Why would you put the HEPC in that position, detract from what has been viewed as a fairly impartial manner in which the HEPC has been conducting themselves? Why would you put someone that clearly has an interest in a major project that the HEPC is working on? Why would you suddenly put them in charge of the HEPC unless there was a desire to steer the work of the HEPC in a certain direction? So I've made that very clear to the governor's office prior to Carolyn Lange's appointment, and certainly have my own concerns about whether we can really continue to view the work of the HEPC as impartial work.
To add further context to this, about a week and a half ago, Governor Justice announced that he was open to the idea of making all of the smaller four-year institutions branches of either WVU or Marshall.
Absolutely not. So,
And I think everybody in the Eastern Panhandle should resist this idea with every fiber of their being.
Because
The independence of Shepherd University is important to the Eastern Panhandle. It is the Eastern Panhandle's public university.
I believe Gordon Gee, Sammi, has cited the California system, and there's been a couple others he's cited as well as being models for what he's thinking about implementing in West Virginia.
I mean, and I'm a graduate from Shepherd, so maybe I am biased here, but I've graduated from that institution twice, and we've grown exponentially in that time. Once from when I got my undergraduate degree in strategic communications, big ups to the production room, but then also my MBA, and to try to consolidate us under the WVU system is only going to wash out a personality, a hard-earned personality, an individual identity that we have in the Eastern Panhandle. It also kind of feeds this mentality that the Eastern Panhandle is the redheaded stepchild of West Virginia, and it's starting to outright enrage me. So someone else please jump into this conversation before I just fly off the handle
I'll
on this
jump
one.
into the conversation
Thanks,
on
Greg.
Come a
that.
little closer to your mic, please, Craig.
And that is that I don't believe that we're any longer the redheaded stepchild. That actually, the rest of West Virginia is looking to the Eastern
They
Panhandle
need to catch up, right?
for the leadership.
My goodness.
To bring the rest of the state in line, and I see that. I
Yes.
see that as the delegates and the senators that I work with, and as well as the state employees.
Thank you.
So that's a good aspect of it. I'm not particularly opposed. Look, Pennsylvania's the same way. I'm not particularly opposed to exploring different funding models and structures on how we're going to go about doing education. But, and there's a big but in this. This is clearly an effort for the governor and WVU to undermine the work that the legislature put in place to start with. The mandate that we statutorily did to be able to get information on what we may want to do forward. Keep in mind, I'm sitting in the Senate for the last 2 years making an argument when they were talking about we had budget issues and wanting to cut funding. I said, well, I can get you $40-50 million right off the bat, and that is take all the per student funding and take everybody down to the funding that both Shepherd and Blue Ridge is getting. Okay, and let me tell you what, they puckered up on that.
They did. I bet they did.
Can I mention, Craig, you mentioned Pennsylvania. They've got the system we have now. They have 14 independent tertiary universities.
Yeah, but a lot of them are under the Penn State.
No, they're not.
That's not what I've been educated
Well,
on.
they're not.
And I could be wrong.
Now, Penn State does have 27 two-year campuses around the state.
Oh, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
But there are 14 independent small universities: Shippensburg, Westchester, Bloomsburg, East Stroudsburg, Clarion, Slippery Rock, Edinburgh, Mansfield, Lock Haven,
California.
California, yeah.
Well, and as you say that, the very man that actually told me that on Penn State was Gordon Gee.
Well, he's wrong.
Well, I'm just telling you where
if he
where
says
that came from.
If he says Shippensburg's a branch of Penn State, he is dead wrong.
Well, like Senator Blair, I certainly have no objection. As a matter of fact, I support taking a very close look at our higher education system in West Virginia to determine, is it the right structure, going forward. I think clearly as you look around the state, and there's been discussion really ever since I've been in the legislature of, do we have the right number of 4 and 2 year institutions? One, clearly we want to make sure we continue to provide access to all parts of the state, but in some areas of the state you have, very small institutions that by all indications are really struggling to survive right next door to each other in very close proximity. So I support that. What I have a concern with, and what I think Dr. Hendricks and others have expressed a concern about, is that they're just some of the actions of the HEPC, the composition of the Blue Ribbon Commission, just really call into question as to how impartial those groups are going to be. If you look at the members of the Blue Ribbon Commission, and there's yet to be some ex officio members appointed as well, but and I think a couple of them might be
Blair
at the table right here.
Greg laughs.
Well, what I get Gordon Gee's motives behind this, but what would the governor's motives be?
Money.
I think he's been persuaded by Gordon Gee that this is the right way to go. Governor Justice doesn't understand higher education very well. Any governor will come into office with gaps in knowledge and then have to rely on other people. That's the only thing I can say. And let me also say to Paul, I agree with you, Paul, that in a couple of cases there probably is some duplication we could correct. But I also am convinced that the biggest problem West Virginia has in higher education, and Gordon Gee is right about this, is we don't have enough West Virginians in college. That is a more serious problem than too many colleges.
This segment was brought to you by Farmers and Mechanics Insurance Companies. When it comes to your home, auto, farm, or business, we're trusted, reliable, and experienced at Farmers and Mechanics Insurance Company.
CBS News Special Report. Protesters pack the streets of London as President Trump and Prime Minister Theresa May get ready to hold a joint news conference at her country home. Correspondent Elizabeth Palmer.
For months, the British government has worked on Mr. Trump's schedule to make sure he didn't have to come anywhere near these protests. But that doesn't dim the mood at all, because the demonstrators know that whatever else, the president is bound to see and hear them on television.
Brits also reacting to an interview in the Sun newspaper that features the president criticizing the prime minister over her Brexit negotiations.
I told her how to do it. She wanted to go a different route.
The interview released during their dinner last night. Charlie Laterman at King's College.
Our relationship with the United States is more important than it's ever been. So Theresa May is going to have to ultimately swallow some aspects of her disappointment at what Trump said.
CBS News Special Report. I'm Deborah Rodriguez.
Now your local news from Talk Radio WRNR. West Virginia Governor Jim Justice said Wednesday that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has issued recommendations on how the state should proceed with contracts related to the RISE flood recovery program. Justice also said his staff, the Department of Commerce, and General Hoyer of the National Guard have developed a course of action to make certain the program moves forward as new contracts are put in place to serve those families still in need. It's anticipated the transition will be completed within the next 30 to 90 days. Healthy Berkeley and the Martinsburg Farmers Market are sponsoring a walking program. Walk with a Doc is for everyone interested in taking steps for a healthier lifestyle, and at the same time having the opportunity to have questions answered by local physicians. The next Walk with a Doc will be held next Friday at the Square in downtown Martinsburg and will be led by Kathy Funk, MD. You should meet at the Square at 4:30. The walk is set to start at 4:45. I'm Adam Boardman, Talk Radio WRNR News.
Our weather forecast doesn't get much better than this for the middle of July and all of the various weekend activities going on. Still some graduation parties out there and things to do, and we will be enjoying temperatures that are very summer-like, very seasonal, a couple degrees above average by the time we get into tomorrow and Sunday. For today, it's sunny and bright, relatively low humidity, high of 86, the wind's light from the southeast. Tonight with clear skies, we're down to the mid-60s. Tomorrow, closer to 90 for our forecast high, and again, lots of sunshine. And for Sunday, sunny to partly sunny, maybe a late-day thundershower, and a high of 91 degrees. I'm Bob Kukin, Talk Radio WRNR.
The 28th season of the Contemporary American Theater Festival returns to Shepherd University, July 6th through the 29th. A chance to see 6 bold new plays, including A Late Morning in America with Ronald Reagan. This world premiere from award-winning playwright Michael Weller takes us to a casual sit-down with the former president for recollections that only the First Lady might know. For a full schedule and more information, go to catf.org.
In the market for a flooring upgrade, Trips Floor Sanding and Berkeley Fashion Flooring does it all, from hardwood floor restoration to new floor installation, including hardwood, tile, vinyl, laminate, carpet, and the hottest trend in flooring, luxury vinyl tile and luxury vinyl plank. Family owned and operated with over 25 years experience, you can expect excellent customer service. Estimates are free. Call 304-229-7009 or online at tripsfloorsanding.com.
Hi, honey.
Where are you?
I've been in line at the post office for the last 30 minutes.
Why are you at the post office? It'll take you all day.
Where else do I go to ship my packages or drop FedEx off at?
Honey, going postal is way faster, has less lines, and friendly service.
Where's going postal?
It's right in the Common Shopping Center in Martinsburg. They'll ship your packages quickly, and you can avoid the lines.
Going postal should be your first choice for all your shipping needs. Going postal, the Commons, Martinsburg.
If you're a victim in a motor vehicle wreck or injured due to another person's fault, at Ferretti Law Office, we get to work protecting your rights and getting you the money you need and deserve. The insurance companies handling your claims want a fast and cheap settlement. Before making that mistake, call Ferretti Law Office at 264-8505 to discuss your claim for free. You did not choose to be injured, but your choice of law firms can make a difference. At Ferretti Law Office, we're here to help.
Welcome back to the program, Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob and Dave. Dave's off today, and in Dave's place, our Friday crew this morning consisting of State Senate Finance Chair Craig Blair, the Education Chair in the House of Delegates Paul Espinosa, and candidates former Delegate John Doyle and Sammi Brown. And our telephone number is 304-263-6586 in this segment. That's the line that is open. And this segment is brought to you by the Ferretti Law Office, delivering first-rate service and results for our clients. The Joe Ferretti Law Office. Joe will be in for David on Tuesday. I'm out all next week. Matt Miller is in for me Monday through Friday, manning the chair. That's everything I needed to get out before we get into our next segment. It's been an historic and disturbing week in the state of West Virginia, and probably the lead headline of the week would have to be the resignation of Justice Menace Ketchum, Craig Blair. This was something that we were expecting at some point along the way, I think, but many of us thought that Alan Lawfrey would go first. Menace Ketchum instead is the first person to go. Did you know that was coming?
Yes and no. You could tell by the way we crafted the impeachment process and everything that knew that there was going to be opportunities for others, and it might not stop with Menace Ketchum, for that matter. So, with that said, look, this is a good thing what's taking place in the state of West Virginia. Whether it's the impeachment process that's going on, all the different things that we've got, rise issues, we've got $1 million that's been wasted in rent at DHHR. We're cleaning house. We're working on making it so the government in West Virginia is accountable to the people. And sure, it's ugly, but it's a long time coming. There's going to be more into the future when it comes to that. So I don't look at this as a negative in any way. I see it as a positive. If there's anything you want to say negative about the impeachment process on the Supreme Court, it sends a bad message out to business that would be thinking about locating here in the state of West Virginia. And with that said, we already had a bad message out there that we were trying to improve from that standpoint. So cleaning that house is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, I have one last thing on to that, too, and that is the voters are going to have the opportunity to put the Supreme Court's budget, and this is very important because that's probably how they got to where they're at today in the Supreme Court, but put the budget under legislative control like 49 other states and the federal government itself. The people get to vote on that in November this year, and it's a good thing, and it puts the checks and balances in place that we need to have.
That may pass 300,000 to nothing, John.
I hope so. I have been in favor of that ever since the end of my first year on the Finance Committee about 25 years ago. It's the American system of government is that the check that the legislature has on the other two branches is the power of the purse. And if you eliminate that, and Craig is right, West Virginia is the only state that has not had that, then the legislature really cannot act as the steward of the public's money in its entirety.
Let's go to the WVU Medicine Berkeley Medical Center talk line, and the Senate Judiciary Chair, Charles Trump, is there waiting for us. Charlie, good morning. Thank you for being with us today.
Good morning, Rob. My pleasure.
And you're on with Craig and Paul and John and Sammi, too.
A room full of luminaries you have assembled there.
Morning, Charlie.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
That is one way of
Morning,
putting it.
Charles.
Good morning, everybody.
The impeachment proceedings are underway with the House of Delegates, and as we know, we will not be spending any time on Menace Ketchum as he has resigned and is gone, but Alan Loffrey grabbing the spotlight, Charlie, right now, and all of the justices, from what I understand, talking with Riley Moore, who's on the House Judiciary Committee, and John Overington, both delegates on the Judiciary Committee out of the Eastern Panhandle, said every justice will be looked at. Doesn't mean everybody's guilty, but everybody will be looked at. While we're sweeping the rug, we're going to open up the couch, too, and find out what fell underneath there, too, Charlie. What's the Senate role in all of this, and how closely are you paying attention to this?
Of course, the Senate role in an impeachment process under Article 4, Section 9 of our Constitution is that the Senate acts as and conducts the trial of any articles of impeachment that are adopted by the House of Delegates. So, actually, the Senate has in terms of chronology of it, the Senate is second to act. And only if the House does indeed adopt articles of impeachment as to a public official.
Will each article be sent to the Senate? Let's say that 4 judges have got articles of impeachment against them, the 4 justices. Will they be sent one by one to the Senate for trial, or will you get all 4 at once and it'll be a collective situation? And I shouldn't say trial, but hearing.
It is a trial, yes.
Is it effectively? It's called a Senate trial?
It's legally a trial.
Okay.
It is indeed a trial, and I think the Constitution contemplates that public officials would be handled separately. Let me tell you, Rob, what we're doing right now. We've been working pretty hard, Senate staff and the Judiciary Committee staff of the Senate, to develop a first draft of a set of rules that would govern an impeachment trial. And I'm happy to talk about process and what the rules might provide for. I don't want to talk about any of the merits of any of the possible cases for the reason that as a senator, my role, if there is an impeachment trial, Craig's as well, will be that of a juror, essentially. We'll be called upon, we'll take an oath to weigh the evidence fairly and impartially and render a judgment. And so I think it'd just be totally inappropriate for me to talk about the merits of any particular case or possible case, but I am happy to talk about process.
Charles, this is John.
Sure, John.
When you all act as jurors, you and Craig and the other 32 act as jurors, what is the standard of proof? Is it like civil law, or is it preponderance of evidence? Is it clear and convincing? Is it beyond a reasonable doubt, or is that up to you all to decide?
It is, I believe it is up to the Senate to decide. It's certainly not specified expressly in the Constitution in Article 4, Section 9. The answer to that question is a subject that will be addressed in the rules for impeachment trial that we're working on right now. Let me just tell you where that is in terms of process. I'm hoping that by Monday or Tuesday, early next week, we're going to have a draft of proposed rules that we can send out to all the membership of the West Virginia Senate. Ultimately, any rules for such a proceeding will have to be adopted by the Senate as a whole. A resolution will be introduced when the Senate is convened to adopt a set of rules, and be up to the Senate to, the Senate as a whole to craft them and adopt them in such form as the Senate determines. So the honest answer to your question, John, is that is at this point an undetermined answer.
Have you formed an opinion about it personally yet?
I'll tell you that the draft that we're working on is going to propose that the standard, the burden of proof, be by clear and convincing evidence. So in between the general civil proof standard, preponderance of the evidence, and the most exacting standard the law recognizes, proof beyond reasonable doubt, which applies in criminal cases. And,
Thank you. There was, and Paul is a member of the House, and you probably are aware of this too, some procedural issues with John Schott yesterday when he was talking about how they were going to draft the rules for the House proceedings, and some of the Democrats objected to the way that was taking place. Paul, do you know what was specifically wrong there?
It was, and I think it gets really to the crux of what we're discussing here is what is going to be the standard that the Senate ultimately uses in order to consider any potential articles of impeachment. And I think one of the resolution that was adopted unanimously, 89-0 by the House, that empowered the House Judiciary Committee to proceed with the work that it's now proceeding with, empowered the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, John Schott, who's our chair of our House Judiciary Committee, to essentially establish the rules of procedure for their work, on this impeachment hearing, and there were several motions, despite the fact that Chairman Schott had reached out to all members of the House Judiciary Committee, had solicited their suggestions as to what rules of procedure, what, if any, changes they would suggest to the rules of procedure that had been developed, with participation of several members of the managers, including Rodney Miller and Andrew Byrd, who are Democratic members of the managers. Those 5 managers been established. There was some effort to try to amend the rules at the last minute, right before the first witness was scheduled to come on the stand. And Chairman Schott rightly ruled those motions out of order because the unanimous resolution that was adopted by the House gave Chairman Schott, as chair of the Judiciary Committee, the authority to establish those rules. I think he did it in a very fair and transparent manner. But I think one of the key rules that they took exception with was that, and I don't have the wording, I think, right here in front of me, but one of the rules that the committee has adopted, based on what's been formulated by the chair, is that there can be no motions to adopt, and I'm paraphrasing, there can be no motions to adopt an article of impeachment until the House Judiciary Council advises that they've completed their work, that they brought all their evidence, because I will tell you that the assumption that Chairman Schott is operating under is that we really need to provide clear and convincing evidence to the Senate. There are some members, frankly, of the House who seem to think that, let's just go ahead. We've got enough already based on media reports that we can go ahead and adopt articles of impeachment immediately. I can tell you, John Schott's not going to go for that. He wants to make sure that there is ample evidence. So that there is clear and convincing evidence for the Senate to consider, and that's the assumption that I think Chairman Schott will insist that the Judiciary Committee act upon.
John Doyle and Sammi Brown, two folks who are running in the Democratic side of the elections in November. There has been we've talked to Jason Barrett, who's the lone Democrat of the House from the Eastern Panhandle, an attempt to try to hurry these proceedings along. There seems to be a lot of concern about having justices on the ballot with the deadline of August the 14th so that the people can select the next justice.
Exactly.
So it seems like they've been trying to hurry the process along. I'm not saying in place of it being accurate and factual and done properly, but it does seem that the concern for the Democratic Party here is more speed than the process of getting it right.
The concern from the Democratic Party, or at least from caucus, is that we want to put the power back into the hands of the people. If we're talking about cleaning house and we're talking about making this a government that truly represents its people as an indicative of our ideology, we want to make sure that the people can weigh in on what their judicial system is going to look like. That's why we want to make sure the process happens before that deadline. I'm not sure it's about rushing. I don't think it's about pushing things forward in that way. We want to make sure that people can weigh in on this. It's not in the power of politicians. It's not in the power of lobbyists. It's putting it back in the hands of the voter. And I think that's right. I think that's fair. So I can respect and understand, even empathize with the fact that we want to be cognizant of due process. I am saying, though, that if we are truly mindful of the people of West Virginia, we're going to want to make sure that this is on the ballot.
I think it's one of the... Go ahead, John.
No, I would not advocate speed instead of thoroughness, Rob. The question is, can we be thorough and still do it in time to have an election? And let me also throw in, this whole controversy has caused me to come very close to advocating an appointed Supreme Court, not appointed local judges, but an appointed Supreme Court. We're supposed to have, as Sammi said, an elected Supreme Court. And I think as long as the rules call for an elected Supreme Court, that's what we ought to have. But I also think we will probably get better justices if we go to some kind of appointment process with the advice and consent of the state Senate.
And the date that you're referencing, just for the benefit of our listeners, August 14th, I believe, is the deadline by which, if there's a vacancy before August 14th,
right,
individuals can file for that open seat. If it's after August 14th, then the governor, under the Constitution and West Virginia Code, would appoint a replacement who would fill that seat until the next election, I believe is how that reads. I will say this, though, and Chairman Schott, I think, rightly pointed this out yesterday. The power of the legislature to essentially overturn the results of an election, and to remove from office a duly elected official. And in this case, we're talking about a member of the highest court in our state. I mean, that is a awesome responsibility. And I think the last thing we want to do is to rush through, the process when we're really talking about substituting our determination for that of the voters. I think probably the best thing that could happen in this situation is what transpired with the resignation of Justice Ketchum. Perhaps at some point, if the evidence seems just insurmountable, and again, I think the process that's taking place now, I think is going to hopefully present a very convincing case one way or another. Perhaps at some point, Justice Lawfrey would determine it makes sense for him to resign.
Lots of luck.
I mean, I think that would be the ideal situation if, in fact, these allegations are true. But to try to rush to reach an August 14th deadline, and when so much is at stake, I just don't think is very wise. And I will say that I'm just not sure if this does, in fact, go to a Senate impeachment trial, the likelihood of being able to not only have the House complete all of its work, but then for the Senate to complete their work by August 14th, I'm not sure that that's really a reasonable expectation under the best of circumstances.
Go ahead, Craig.
Okay. John, were you there for the impeachment of A. James Manchin?
No, I was not in that.
What was the timeline? You probably knows. It was weeks on the House side, and then managing to get it over. Wasn't it like 10 weeks?
It was, but they met almost all the time. That they were in session. That committee was in session a good bit. The Judiciary Committee.
This is my point that I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah.
That was A. James Manchin, 1989. That was 10 weeks just in the House side. Let's say I'm wrong, and it was 6 weeks. See where I'm getting at on the math on this? And here's the one thing. Look, I was on the side of getting expeditious and moving this thing through. And I'm learning something as time goes on, because I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I watched smart people and listen to them and then digest all of it and say to myself, hey, I think I might be wrong on where I was at on this. Because I've been on this show saying I'd like to move things right along. The fact is that we don't want to change precedent or set a precedent, actually, that we end up turning it into basically a lynch mob. Okay? That does not need to take place in the state of West Virginia. I want Lawfrey gone. I want him to resign as well and be out. They do us all a favor on what's going on with this. But if you press it, like what we're talking about here, it can get us in trouble, not just in this situation. But
Let me bring Charlie. Can I bring Charlie Trump back in here, please? Because we do have
come on in, Charlie. Tag Charlie in.
As he is the Senate Judiciary Chair. Charlie, what sort of evidence are you hoping to see come from the House that makes this a, for lack of a better way of putting it, an efficient process on the Senate side?
I think it'd be inappropriate for me to comment on what sort of evidence that I'm hoping to see. I am approaching this as a juror.
Well, I don't mean specific evidence. I don't mean well, I need to see Lawfrey's receipts doing this. I mean from a juror's perspective, what are the kinds of things you'll need to see to make a decision, one way or the other?
Well, it will be. I guess the general answer to that question is. If the evidence is such that it convinces 2/3 of the members of the Senate by the standard adopted in the rules we're working on, that grounds for impeachment exist and have been proven, then that would sustain a vote by individual senators to convict. If not, then the senators would be voting not to convict.
Maybe the better question, Charlie, is what, in your opinion, would constitute corruption? What would constitute an
impeachment vote?
An impeachment vote. What would make
a conviction vote
that you would say that this is absolutely aborrable and you will not stand for this for a man that.
And I hope you all will forgive me.
Sure.
But. In my role as a prospective juror, I and the person, one of 34, who will be called upon to cast that vote one way or the other, at this juncture, I think it would be inappropriate for me to give you a definitive answer to that question.
Let me go to this then. What, in terms of an impeachment vote, is there one item that can swing it toward a vote for conviction? Is it several items that make it rise to the level worthy of a conviction vote? Charlie, help me on the process of that.
Well, you guys, you're going to accuse me of weaseling on this, but I don't presume that the House of Delegates is going to send us any particular thing. And I'm not going to be involved in that process. The House of Delegates will follow its process. And if and when articles of impeachment as to any public official arrive in the West Virginia Senate, then we will do our duty, and we'll have in place, I hope, a good, fair set of rules that will govern that procedure. So that's what I'm focused on right now, development of the rules.
Charles?
I'll tell you that we've worked very hard. We've examined all the available precedent in West Virginia There were impeachments in the early 20th century and late 19th century in West Virginia. The Senate actually did draft a set of rules in 1989 in preparation for an impeachment trial of A. James Manchin, but the rules were never adopted and the trial never occurred, all of it being preempted by the resignation from office of the treasurer at that time, A. James Manchin. And we've also looked outside West Virginia. We've looked at rules of the U.S. Senate. We've examined, you all may remember recently, not too long ago, we have a set of rules that we've looked at from the Illinois Senate that were adopted for the impeachment trial of Governor Blagojevich there.
Hey, Charles.
So, yes.
A technical question. Let's say, just for grins, that
1 minute left.
That the House of Delegates sends you 4 articles of impeachment on a particular justice. Not going to name the justice. Could you all technically convict on 1 or 2 and not on the others, or would you have to decide on them as a group?
I think certainly the former.
Thank you.
I think certainly the former. And I think at least the initial draft of rules we're working on will provide for that possibility. Yeah, sure. That if you analogize it to any sort of criminal indictment, that happens all the time. Juries find a defendant guilty of counts 1, 3, 6, and 8, and not guilty on other counts, and the sentence is rendered accordingly.
Charlie, thanks so much for your time. Off the top of your head, do you know how many attorneys are in the Senate?
There are 5, I believe. 2 on the majority side, Ryan Weld and me, and 3 on the minority side, on the Democratic side, Mike Romano, Mike Wolfel, and Corey Palumbo.
Thank you,
And
Charlie.
I hope I'm not forgetting anybody.
Hey, it's 9 o'clock. Our news break is next. This is Talk Radio, WRNR Martinsburg.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by TheraWorks Relief.
I'm Deborah Rodriguez. Thousands of people are jamming the streets of London to protest President Trump's visit to the UK. Correspondent Steve Futterman is there.
This is the first wave of people marching towards Trafalgar Square. They are carrying signs. They have noisemakers. Some people have brought pots and pans that they're using to make noise. The signs, typical. One says, "Trump not welcome." Another says, "Dump Trump."
There is a blimp of a baby Donald Trump in a diaper flying overhead. The president is about 40 miles away, meeting with Prime Minister Theresa May back at her country home. CBS's Vicki Barker.
I'm Vicki Barker in London.
Right here last night.
Broad smiles from President Trump and British Prime Minister Theresa May as they sat down for talks at her country retreat. This after Mr. Trump ignited a political uproar by criticizing his hostess's handling of the Brexit process, praising her arch rival Boris Johnson to a British tabloid.
Effectively, he's cut her off at the knees.
The BBC's Gary O'Donoghue. Lunch with the Prime Minister, followed by tea with the Queen at Windsor Castle. But first, a joint news conference.
And that news conference has just gotten underway. A jury in St. Louis makes a decision on damages in the case of 22 women and their families who say asbestos in baby powder contributed to their ovarian cancer.
$3,150 million.
Punitive damages coupled with compensatory damages mean Johnson & Johnson will have to pay out a total of almost $4.7 billion. The company says it'll appeal. The Justice Department says it will appeal after a federal judge cleared the way for a merger between AT&T and Time Warner. The argument? CBS News legal analyst Thane Rosenbaum.
If you allow these two companies to merge, it will be bad for consumers. It will diminish consumer welfare. It will be anti-competitive.
A teenager from Louisiana says it's the worst and most exciting vacation he's ever had. 19-year-old Blake Spataro survived 10 hours in the water off the coast of Georgia's St. Simon's Island.
I was out there sitting by the shore when a riptide comes up and washes me out straight into the ocean.
He says he screamed, but no one heard him and drifted 6 miles when he finally reached a golf course. Stormy Daniels back on stage at a strip club in Columbus, Ohio last night. Hours before, charges were dropped after police arrested her, claiming she'd rubbed her chest against the faces of undercover officers. The police chief later said state law against physical contact only applies to strippers who perform at a club regularly.
TherraWorksRelief.com. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 job boards with just one click, and then their smart matching technology finds the right candidates. Try it for free. To prevent muscle cramps in your legs and feet, use TheraWorks Relief. This fast-acting foam is clinically proven to relieve leg and foot cramps. Get TheraWorks Relief today at select Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid pharmacies or TheraWorksRelief.com. Ask your pharmacist for TheraWorks Relief.
Hey, Dave, you in for golf this weekend?
I can't. I promised I'd find a plumber to fix a sink and a painter to paint the...
Just use Angie's List.
Doesn't that cost money?
Not at all. It's free to find pros in your area who can do the work. You can even read ratings and reviews from other customers.
What about roofing pros?
Angie's List has pros for everything. And to save time, they'll even match you to the best pros for the job.
Oh, that's awesome. Looks like I'll be able to play after all.
Find the best pros for your next project at Angie's List.
Now your local news from Talk Radio WRNR. She was one of 3 people who broke into the home of a man 50 years her senior and assaulted him, and 5 years from now she'll be eligible for parole. 27-year-old Carrie Ray of Martinsburg was originally going to have to serve 13 years before that eligibility kicked in, but had the time reduced on appeal due to the circuit court allowing into the record both her prior bad acts and statements made about her by a co-defendant. The appeals court also ruled it a case of double jeopardy, as Ray was convicted of 3 counts of robbery for the same robbery. According to the Herald Mail, 22-year-old Isaiah Daniels of Martinsburg was charged Tuesday night after police seized more than $2,500 in cash, a 9mm pistol, 3 bags of marijuana, and a digital scale after responding to investigator-reported breaking and entering at a Georgetown Square residence. The SUV Daniels was driving was searched. That's where police found Daniels' ID. I'm Adam Boardman, Talk Radio WRNR News.
Our weather forecast doesn't get much better than this for the middle of July and all of the various weekend activities going on. Still some graduation parties out there and things to do, and we'll be enjoying temperatures that are very summer-like, very seasonal, a couple degrees above average by the time we get into tomorrow and Sunday. For today, it's sunny and bright, relatively low humidity, high of 86, the wind's light from the southeast. Tonight with clear skies, we're down to the mid-60s. Tomorrow, closer to 90 for our forecast high, and again, lots of sunshine. And for Sunday, sunny to partly sunny, maybe a late-day thundershower, and a high of 91 degrees. I'm Bob Kukin, Talk Radio WRNR.
The future doesn't wait. Why should you? Blue Ridge Community and Technical College offers over 50 degree and certificate programs in education, IT, culinary arts, engineering, and so much more. Small class sizes, flexible schedules with evening and online classes, with affordable tuition, plus financial aid is available to those who qualify. Now you can go to college. Visit us online at blueridgectc.edu. That's blueridgectc.edu. Stop waiting and enroll today.
The WVU Medicine Spring Mills office building is now open. This new 3-story, 40,000 square foot facility is conveniently located off Interstate 81, exit 20 at the intersection of US 11 and Campus Drive. The WVU Medicine Spring Mills medical office building features many different offices and services for area residents. It's now home to urgent care, women's imaging center, lab services, and primary care pediatrics. The WVU Medicine Spring Mills office building now open to serve you.
For the last 34 years, the Martinsburg Bulldogs have been heard on Talk Radio WRNR.
Leaping into the air, Cello Teneval has it. Is he in the end zone? Yes, he is. It's a Martinsburg Bulldog touchdown just inside the pylon and keeping his feet in bounds on the far sideline. Teneval pulls it in.
Join Matt Miller, Vic Holmes, and Jason Colrick for all the 2018 football action on your home for Martinsburg football, Talk Radio WRNR, the Panhandle Sports radio station.
Welcome back to the program, Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob and Dave, the Friday show. Dave's off today. This segment is brought to you by L.A. Roberts Jewelers, located in downtown Martinsburg, committed to excellence in quality design and craftsmanship. Rob here along with Senate Finance Chair Craig Blair. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in. Also, House Education Chair Paul Espinosa. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Rob.
And He is a candidate for the House of Delegates, formerly served for how many years, John?
22.
22. John Doyle. Good morning, Johnny.
Good morning to everyone.
And Sammi Brown is here as well, also a candidate for the House of Delegates. Sammi.
New on the scene.
And
I needed additional words. Everybody else got titles and fun stuff. I needed something else. I needed pizzazz to mine.
what would you like with your...
The incomparable
The
Sammi
incomparable
Brown.
Sammi Brown. the Sammi Brown who is not Sam Brown is also running for office.
That's right.
from
How
the Democrat
about
side.
the new David Welch?
She is in the Welch chair. She has the Welch
Ooh,
co-host chair.
It's the Robin Sammi show.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave.
That didn't take long, did it? Hey, at least you put you second and not first. Dave always tries to put his name first.
I'm showing respect.
I appreciate that. Totally. On the WVU Medicine Berkeley Medical Center talk line is Tom Lange. Tom has been with us before during the teacher strike that took place during the school year. A lot of valuable information from Tom. And formerly, as now that's about 24 hours old, a member of the SBA. Good morning, Tom. Thank you so much for being with us today. Okay, I don't have Tom. Oh, wait a second. I do now. There you go. Can you hear me okay, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Is that your car radio in the background?
I'm gonna call right back in. Let me call right back in.
That's good. Maybe the first option when I didn't have the volume was the better option. Sounded like it. I don't know if that was his GPS or a car radio or what that is. But Tom abruptly resigned from the school building authority yesterday. We talked about this a little bit in the first segment. He didn't like the direction that it was going under David Roach. Do any of you folks know David Roach particularly, one way or the other?
I don't know him particularly.
I don't believe I do.
Yeah.
I don't either.
John or Sammi? Yeah. Tom was not happy with the lack of transparency as a way that was going, apparently. We're going to get more from Tom. I wanted to go into something real quickly, the A.J. Manchin question that you asked a little bit ago, Craig, in the last segment as to how long that took. Mike Folk, Delegate Folk, texted me and said the A. James Manchin impeachment was during the regular session in January, February, March. The trial wasn't scheduled till July of that year. Start to finish, it was about 6 months total.
And again, I really applaud Chairman Schott for the way he's conducting the meetings of the Judiciary Committee, because as he pointed out when we were considering the resolution that again was adopted by the House 89-0, he said, he pointed out no one wants to hire an attorney or would hire an attorney who would go into court presenting the minimum amount of evidence that they think they need to win a case. You typically want to make sure you have all of your ducks in a row. And again, in this case, we are operating under the assumption that we want to be able to provide to the Senate, if in fact we do pass articles of impeachment, we want to be able to provide a case that has clear and convincing evidence and not rely on some lesser threshold that the Senate might consider.
And you have to allow time enough for the accused to be able to mount a defense, and that takes time too. And again, I was, like I said, I was one of the ones I was a lynch mob mentality when I was last on this show, and I've gained some wisdom out of this, and it's slowed it down.
Can I suggest
Sure.
on the A. James Manchin trial, it occurs to me that probably needed to go a lot longer than this one. They spent a lot of time learning about Wall Street, things about puts and calls and stuff like that, to determine not just about A. James, but the two people working for him, Arnie Margolin and Kathy Fletcher, who were the people who actually did the work that A. James Manchin was going to be impeached for. And they had to learn all about that stuff. And yeah, I had forgotten it was during the regular session. Judiciary Committee took that up as part of its work every day that they were in there. But again, they had to.
But bad investments aren't necessarily impeachable. Okay? If it was, you have to do something that is dereliction of your duty on that, and so that creates a whole other...
Yes, you're right, Craig, and that's why it took so long for them to figure it out.
Well, I think that's why we were bringing this up in the last segment, though, is that what is impeachable? What's corruption? What constitutes for that type of tag in this conversation? And then I have to bring it back to people because it just seems to be the part of the conversation that we're not having. The last time I was on the show, and ironically, it was right after you, Craig, we were talking about how if we aren't careful folks are already disenfranchised in civic duty. They're already disenfranchised about how they engage in the process. And if we aren't cognizant of that, we could deter more people from engaging in that process. The one way that we can do that is to offer them a say. And that's why that deadline's so big. That's why it's so important. This isn't about rushing through the process.
Well, if you want to disenfranchise voters, try just willy-nilly overturning an election of a Supreme Court justice. I think that'd be a good way to do it.
Exactly, that were put there by the voters.
Well,
okay, so and you know what? It's only 2 years if we miss that to the where there will be somebody on the ballot to take care of that. We fill vacancies all the time throughout this. So I get where you're coming from, but being disenfranchised is self-imposed a lot, in my opinion. Okay, I've never missed an election the whole time in my life. Not a one. And I've went through some bad stuff where I was not doing the things I should in life. But I knew the one thing I was supposed to do, that I got out of paying what I did in taxes, which was minimal at the times, and everything is I had a right to vote and do it.
There's another angle here, too, Craig.
Hey, is Tom on the phone?
Tom is not yet back on the phone.
So here we
he
go,
would have stopped
going
this.
in. Going in.
Rob would have stopped. Craig, you're right, except remember, when you have an appointment to an office that's supposed to be an elected office, and that person's in for a couple of years, you are giving that person the advantage of incumbency when that person runs for office, which is why I've toyed with the idea that maybe we should have a rule that when someone is appointed to fill the remaining term of an office that is vacated, there should be maybe a rule that says that person cannot run, so that so that you have a brand new election like you would have if the office were vacated at election time.
Well, our good friend John Yoder and I, and we've had these discussions before, and you alluded to it earlier about an appointment process, and then having some sort of mechanism that where you could put them up for a vote, then later I forget.
It's a retention election, is what it's called. California. Right. It's called the Missouri Plan. California has it. Missouri, several other states. Yeah.
Thank you, because that was John's words all the time. The Missouri Plan. John loved that idea. He thought that was. Yeah. Studying all the different ways that we go about doing it in this country, that was the best route to go, and he was an advocate for that.
Well, while I certainly support allowing the voters, if at all possible, to make this decision, it has been pointed out that you have a vacancy, right before that August 14th deadline. Who's likely to benefit from that as far as a candidate? It's going to be a candidate that has the most name recognition, not necessarily the best candidate, but it's going to be typically that's part of a campaign, is trying to get your name recognition out there. You only have a couple months in order to do that before the November election. It may or may not. You may or may not end up with the best candidate. You would certainly end up with somebody elected by the people, which again I generally support, but you might not get the best candidate that you would have if you did have a longer period of time for voters to be able to get to know. Who has the money to basically mount a serious campaign, in just a couple month period? I mean, again,
I think there have been people who've been sitting around waiting, thinking about running, who are preparing to do so.
Well, they've got a window of opportunity because Dennis Ketchum gave them that.
That's right. They do.
Okay.
Paul Jason Barrett, Delegate Barrett, has stated on this show several times, I'm sure you've heard him say it, that this is a process that should have begun much earlier, that a lot of this information was known even when the House was in session in the winter, and that this is a process that was delayed several months because Republicans flat out did not want to get rid of a quote-unquote Republican judge. Anything you were in the House during that time, Craig? You were in the Senate. Did you know about this stuff back then? Was there any delay tactics involved at all in this thing?
Well, there were certainly, items in the media, talking about, some of the impropriety. Of course, that was out there. But I think it was also pretty clear, although obviously the U.S. attorney is never going to confirm or deny that that investigation take place. I think there was a fair amount of speculation and I hesitate to use the word evidence, but seemed to be indications that there was a federal investigation going on, and I think there was a desire by the House to, again, let's see where the evidence leads us. And I think particularly once those indictments came out by the U.S. Attorney, and then the Judiciary Investigation Board came out with their findings.
That came first.
The ethics. Right. But I think once those things happened, I think it was clear that there was ample evidence, and I think there was also a reluctance to interfere with an investigation. I mean, the last thing that we want to do is to be out there, trying to interview witnesses at the same time the U.S. Attorney and the Judiciary Investigation Board, and I'm probably calling that the wrong name, but I think
Judicial Ethics Commission, I think is what it's called.
I think there was a desire to let that process go forward, without, again, interfering or in any way make it more difficult.
Delegate Barrett has said on this show that the Republicans hoped that this would go away. They wanted to sweep it under the rug. Again, Republican stuff.
Nonsense.
It is nonsense.
And I don't go along with that. And Jason and I are good friends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But I've told him that to his face. That's nonsense on that. Hell, if anything, we clean up our own quicker than what we do if it's a Democrat. From that standpoint. By the way, we made a nonpartisan election of judges for that matter. And we got plenty of stuff on Robin Davis that has been out there. There's all kinds of things that's taken place over the years from that standpoint. You have to have the evidence and you do not want to convict somebody or impeach somebody, better yet, that could actually not be guilty.
But didn't we say that there's ample evidence? I thought that was part of the conversation, that we've FOIA'd, we've gone through this process.
No, we're talking about in a timeline. At this point in time, you're right. Back when Jason's saying that we should have been doing something,
January, February, March.
Okay.
On that, see, there's got to be a timeline on how you're factoring this in.
So why can't we make that August 14th deadline? I think that's my biggest concern.
I would implore our panelists to not pound on the table, please.
So sorry.
The microphones pick that up.
So sorry.
You're talking 31 days.
31 days?
30 or
Okay.
31 days on that.
But I do think that Jason is onto something this way. Even if it wasn't intentional, and I don't know, I can't speak to anybody's motives, but it seems to me there was enough information floating around that if the House of Delegates had simply established the procedures at that point and set set in place a system whereby they could immediately go to work once some of these things, the Ethics Commission or the U.S. Attorney came up with something that was public. They wouldn't have had to wait for the governor to call him into special session to get this going. I do think there was enough evidence around there that a better preparation should have been made.
Well, as the legislative auditor testified yesterday before the House Judiciary Committee, as soon as some of the media revelations came forward, the Kenny Bass segment that really kind of highlighted a lot of what was transpiring with regard to the purchase of the couch, the renovations of the offices, and so forth. The House leadership directed the legislative auditor to begin an investigation at that point. So that began almost immediately after. And I believe you serve on the Joint Government and Finance Committee.
Right.
I believe you had a role in that as well, did you not?
And by the way, the purchase of the couch is not illegal. Remember, the Supreme Court currently, right now, controls their own budget. If they want to spend $130,000 or $1 million on a couch, they can do that.
Which
but
brings
at the
me
same
back
time,
to what constitutes as misappropriation of funds.
That's right.
What is it that qualifies as corruption?
Using a state vehicle on your own time and reimbursing yourself for the
does
mileage.
not have to be illegal to be impeachable.
I agree with you on that. But it comes back to the fact that if we're not controlling their budget, this is why the Supreme Court has so many things underneath of their budget to start with, is because over the years they kept having these pools of money because they got whatever they wanted, and then the legislature kept putting things into there for allowed them to be kingdom builders.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
I said it earlier, I'll say it again, you're right about that.
And hey, I've gotten 2 of them from John today, and I'm feeling
Wait
really
for the other
good.
shoe to drop here.
I'm the tough critic, so it's not happening. It's not happening.
Tom Lange is back on our phone line, and we're going to get to him in just a second here after our first commercial break of this hour. This segment was brought to you by the Washington Nationals, and the Nationals and Harris Tweeter are teaming up for Kids Batting Helmet Giveaways. On Sunday, this weekend, actually next weekend, the 22nd, the first 10,000 kids ages 12 and under get a Nationals batting helmet on their way into the Nats Braves game at 1:35. For tickets, go to nationals.com.
Come in now for the summer clearance event at Miller's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Martinsburg, where you can get up to $11,250 in total savings on a 2018 Ram Bighorn. Pay just $229 a month with $3,499 down. How about a 2019 Jeep Cherokee for only $189 a month with $3499 down and up to $4,000 cash back? Get $3,250 off a 2018 Dodge Challenger or Charger with payments as low as $179 per month. Going green? Check out the 2018 Hybrid Pacifica with a $7,500 federal tax credit. These savings and more are available at the summer clearance event at Miller's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram on Kelly Island Road or online at millerschryslerjeep.com, your Chrysler certified pre-owned dealer. All payments based on approved credit, taxes, tags, and processing fees extra. See dealer for details.
When it comes to protecting what matters most, it makes sense to choose an insurance agent that's a part of your community. Your local Allstate agent knows the ins and outs of both owning and protecting a home in your neighborhood. By choosing a local Allstate agent, you get an expert who knows the community and is committed to getting to know you, which means you'll get the protection that fits you and your life. Are you in good hands? Contact Martinsburg Allstate agent Gary Kelly today for a free quote at 263-4596. Subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Insurance Company, Northbrook, Illinois. Allstate Vehicle and Property Insurance Company.
The Wellness Center at Berkeley Medical Center introduces a healthy way of life. It's not just another diet, but a weight management program developed by the Wellness Center that includes metabolic testing, a simple 10-minute breathing test that determines how many calories your body actually needs, followed by working one-on-one with a health coach to develop a personalized mix of exercise and nutrition to tip the scales in your favor towards successful weight loss. A lifetime of good health awaits at the Wellness Center. For more info, call 304-264-1232.
This segment of the program, Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob and Dave, the Friday crew, Dave's off today, is brought to you this morning by the Brown Funeral Homes and Cremations. Robert Fields and Sons, a family-owned full-service funeral home, proudly serving our area since 1880. If you're just tuning in, Rob here along with Senate Finance Chair Craig Blair, Senate House Education Committee Chair Paul Espinosa, and candidates in the House of Delegates John Doyle and Sammi Brown. Our producer is Sherry Dieter Davis, and our intern in charge of social media this summer is the wonderful Saban Hunter, very talented at what she does, and we very much appreciate it, and more in the day she goes back to school. Let's get to the headlines now. We'll tell you it's a pick-em as you get to these things here this week. Tom Lange announced yesterday he's resigning from the West Virginia School Building Authority because of changes made under Executive Director David Roach, and he joins us now on the WVU Medicine Jefferson Medical Center talk line. Tom, good morning. Thank you for calling back in, sir.
Good morning, Rob, and to the ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you folks.
Good morning.
Tom.
Tom.
Good morning, Tom.
One of the quotes in the article I read on Metro News was that you were not happy with the lack of transparency under David Roach. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Well, it really is not David Roach. He was just appointed as the new executive director. He knows very little about this. This is the governor's folks. This is Brian Abraham and the state superintendent are putting this together. What they did was they put a letter out to the board members asking them not to go to the counties to look at the projects. And I saw the letter. I talked to Brian Abraham about it. I told him I didn't agree with it, that if you're going to ask me to sit on the board and spend $50 million a year of state taxpayers' money, I want to see the projects. And And basically what they're saying is we need to treat everybody fairly. Right now, the Board of Education, the superintendent and the board president comes from the SBA, gives a 5-minute presentation and on their project. And then our staff, which is we have 4 staff members who go across the state. Each of them assigned, I think, 10 or 11 counties or whatever it is. And they don't see all the projects. They just get together as a group. And I just told them, I've been on this thing since 2005. We've had members been on there since 1990. And the members go out and they look at projects. I've looked at them since I've been on the board. I think if I'm going to spend taxpayer dollars, I want to look at the projects, see what they're doing. I want to ask questions. And I try to get as much information as I can. I look at their budgets. I read the local newspapers and see what the boards are doing. I look at the population. Because right now we have 14 counties, rural counties in this state that are operating in the red. And I'm just concerned about those. So, and every decision I make on that board affects a child somewhere. Either a child's going to be able to go into an updated school, one has been remodeled, or a new one, or someone's going back to a school that hasn't been funded, and they're going back to maybe an unhealthy building, or someone doesn't meet the requirements. So I take it very seriously. I do a lot of homework, and I have a lot of respect from the members of my board on what my opinions are, and I advocate for what I believe in or what I'm against.
Sammi, any questions for Tom in regards to what you just heard?
I think, Tom, can you go back to the 14 counties that are operating in the red right now? What are your thoughts as to why they're operating in such duress, especially when education should be our focus statewide?
Well, it's a loss of enrollment. They and basically don't have the tax base, and it's difficult for those counties when you don't have any tax base and they don't have the community support for levies or bonds because of maybe their economic situation. It's difficult, Sammi. My issue too, and I'm glad you got Paul and Craig on there because they made some changes. When I got on the board, the architects were pretty much in charge. When we put the money out to counties, the counties just kind of took the money and they did, and the architects said, well, they're our clients, and they would do change orders, and the projects weren't getting completed on time, and they were late, and I was pretty frustrated. So we, as a board, we started putting some things in place that held people accountable, and we would hold payment if this stuff wasn't on time or giving us reason, and we wouldn't, just because the board requested the monies doesn't mean we're going to approve it. Because I told myself, my thing is you got to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. It's real simple.
Agreed.
And I had governors, people come to me on, it was not only this governor, but prior governors, they come and I just told them flat out, if it's not good for kids and it's not in the best interest of taxpayer dollars, I'm not supporting it.
Hey,
it's real
Tom.
simple for me.
Tom, this is Craig. You and I have had our differences over the years, but let me tell you what, I thought that you were an absolute asset on the school building authority, and your resignation will only allow the Brian Abraham, the governor's office, to have their way. I'm a little bit concerned by this. Tell me how we benefit by you leaving.
Well, here's the thing, Craig. I'm one vote, and the rest of the people on that committee, some of them are worried about getting reappointed. My term's not up till 19, and I just said they're changing this whole thing, putting they're trying to change 6,200 to loosen it up, give Arkansas going right back to where we were in 2005. They sent a letter out to the superintendents and said, do not ask board members to come to your county to look at your project. And, I'm not going to put superintendents in a position to say, well, I want to come to your county. They don't know what the issue is.
Tom, how many members are on the SBA, by the way? Sorry, John.
11. This is what I try. Abraham made a comment about backroom deals, and I'm laughing. It takes 6 votes to get your project approved. So you got 11 people on that board, and some are all different parts of the state, and I'm the only one from the Eastern Panhandle. And then a lot of them have never been up here. And it's unfortunate. Manny Arvine Berkeley keeps on coming down there for projects for building. And I'm trying to explain to these folks that we're growing so fast up here, he can't keep them in the classroom. There's not enough classrooms.
Exactly.
Hey, Tom, this is John.
I want to tell Craig and Paul this. They're trying to make changes in our policies that would give the legislature less oversight of the SBA, and they're doing it right now. They're because I asked them, so why are we doing these policy changes? because to limit the oversight of the legislature. And I said, why don't you give them the whole policy? Well, I'd rather put everything under legislative oversight, so everything's out in the open.
Hey, Tom, this is John. Why do you think the governor and Abraham don't want the members to go look at the projects?
Well, let me tell you why. Because I'm probably the most influential, and I'm not saying this for myself, but I've been in the business 40-some years. I understand school budgets. I look at their budgets. A lot of members look to me, and I do my homework. And they know that I have a lot of influence on that board. And, but members will ask me, and they can keep me out of and Steve Payne is one, they can keep me out of these counties. It all started with Nicholas County. When I went after them on Nicholas, I think they were wrong on Nicholas. I thought they were wrong on Fayette, and we did make the changes in Fayette. And I'm pretty outspoken. I will tell you right now, the last meeting, the state board came in front of us for $200,000 for a project. After I got done questioning them, and, Dr. Payne had tried to respond to it, and their person from the State Department, and after I got done asking them a series of questions, it was going to cost us $2.5 million instead of $200,000. And we moved to table it because, our board was really confused about it. So, the thing is, I go out there, like, for example, I go to Berkeley County, Manny Arvon puts a bid out, bid A, bid B, and bid C. He's got two schools, so he bids it 3 different ways. I'll go into a county, I said, have you ever thought about doing your bid this way? And doing them that way. I go to Raleigh County, they share with me, well, here's my project. I said, well, I can't support that project because I'm an instructional guy. I'm a 6th grade teacher. I'm not going to support gyms and, office space for whatever. I said, you guys can bring it. You got to have 6 votes, but you won't have mine. And they thought, well, a lot of them asked me to come and look at the project because they know I'll advocate or I'll speak up for or against the project. And they need 6 votes. And these are competitive. You get $200 million worth of requests for $50 million. And so why wouldn't superintendents ask board members to come and look at their projects to give them, at least a little opportunity to educate them about their project, and so when they do come time to discussion, hopefully one of our board members will advocate on their behalf. It just makes common sense.
Tom, Paul Espinosa here. First, I'd like to join the other panelists in saying just really thank you for your service. As I shared earlier in the program, I think anytime we have volunteers here from the Eastern Panhandle that are willing to not only put in the travel, but put in the time and personal expense to participate on these boards and commissions, certainly appreciate that. And I've certainly valued your perspective. I know we've had the opportunity to interact while I've been in the legislature, and certainly appreciate your service.
And this is John. Let me say the same thing, Tom. You clearly were one of the best members of the school building authority that we've ever had. I'm sorry to see you go. I understand that you have your reasons, and I respect that.
Hey, Tom, let me ask a question here, and that is in regards to Abraham's accusations of backroom deals, and that's the reason why board members are going out to these projects and looking at them. Is there any truth to that at all? Or have you been witness to that at any of your time on the board?
I challenged them. I said, name me one. Board members, we'll go, when we went to a meeting, they'll say, well, what project do you like? And I'll ask them, I said, which one do you like? Because when I go to a meeting, I rank them all because you never know, your project's not going to be able to get, you get to choose by your seniority. And a lot of these board members, by the time it gets around to them, maybe their projects are gone. Then they don't know what to ask. Then they don't know what to put up. And they want to put up a project because they haven't listed them. I try to tell them, you better list 4 or 5 projects that you like and put them in order of what you like, because when it comes around to you, you might not get those. And what we do is we go around and everyone gets you pick up as many as you want, and then we got a budget. And then we start pulling them out one by one. Like the last meeting, Berkeley County, I put them up for $1 million because they needed classrooms up here. Well, they had to go through the scrutiny of we had to have a vote. We pulled them out, and someone else made the motion because he said my argument, the points I made were valid, and that we needed to do that. I will tell you, we gave a project of $6 million to a county that has a $36 million surplus. I didn't vote for it, but they got enough votes to get it. They put up $6 million, and we gave them $6 million. And I guess, and they had $36 million surplus in their budget. I spoke against it, but It's still, it didn't work. So that's just the way democracy works down there. That's fine. But you better have someone that knows what's going on. I mean, Morgan County, when David Banks was up there, he called me up. I went with David Banks up there in Berkeley Springs High School, and I looked at the project. And he said, Tom, the architects told us you ought to do this first and come back later. I said, Dave, why don't you just do it all at once? It'd probably be cheaper. Come in front of the SBA and try to do it all at once. I mean, I don't know if you'll get the money, but you got to have 6 votes, but I'll advocate for it. And I advocate for a lot of projects.
So, Tom,
but they want control. They want, it's the state superintendent and the governor's office. What's his name? David Roach. He's not a player in this thing. David Roach. He had to hire 2 people to interview for the job that they had to fill down there because he didn't know what questions to ask.
So Tom, you have any given funding round, about how many projects come before the SBA?
Oh, Paul, maybe 20.
And out of those 20, how many do you visit, or do you think? How many do you visit out of the 20?
I would try to visit maybe 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
Half of them. A lot of times I know what they are already because a lot of them come back for a second time that I visited prior. For example, I've been. I just got a note today from Doug Lambert up in Grant County. He asked me to come to Grant. He took me out to Mount Storm and different places, wanted to show me what they're trying to do up there. And then he sent me a note that said, "I want to thank you for your support of rural counties." I will tell you, Paul. One time I kind of was trying to figure out what everybody was doing, and at the end I had my own plans, and I put 9 rural counties up there as a rural project, as one project. You either take all 9 counties or none of them. And the board members all looked out at me, and I said, guys, that project is as much as Fayette counties. So I said, and the superintendents from the rural counties are sitting out in the audience because they never even get they don't think, well, we're not going to get funded because they don't have any money, but they all got funded. And so I try to do what I think is best for kids.
So again, I think it's wonderful that you take the time, to go up and educate yourself, talk to these folks. But again, I'm just going to play devil's advocate, and I'm not suggesting you're doing anything wrong, but just to play devil's advocate, what about the projects that you aren't able to see? Is there concern, or could that be part of the impetus for this policy? Is that what about the projects that nobody goes to see? Do they feel like they're being treated unfairly or inequitably? And how do you fix that? How do you ensure that each potential project has the same amount of involvement? Is that possible?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but the thing is, for example, Mercer County has a member on the board in that area. Cabell has a member on the board in that area. Ohio County, down in southern west of Logan has a member on the board. Charleston has a member on the board. And then I'm from the Eastern Panhandle, and so I don't initiate the ones that unless they're asking for big money. A lot of times the superintendents will call me and ask me to come up, and you guys depend on your other board members also who have visited counties and ask questions. And the thing is, you can't get them, but our staff will get to them, and plus they present to us in that 5-minute form. But that's, I'm trying to educate myself, Paul.
And I appreciate that.
If I'm going to spend that, if they're asking for $20 million over a period of time, I want to see what the money's being spent on. And I'll tell you, I'm not a big fan. The architects, I'm not their favorite person because I think that they're cutting a little cash is quite a bit, and I think it's that's another thing. Giving them back the control of this is a real concern of mine.
May I jump in here?
Absolutely.
Where we go from here, Tom, and the reason I asked this question is the governor's office lots of times are just doing what they're looking at things from a business perspective. And they don't take into account the legislative perspective, how government works, and all that. And I'm a big one from wanting to do things from the business perspective as well. But lots of times that it doesn't provide the checks and balances that you need. You end up with dictatorships, and then what I'm getting at is backroom deals really do start cooking whenever you take the check and balances that the system's put in place. I think the SBA has come a long ways from what it was just 20, 30 years ago on how money is being being allocated out to the schools. Give me some advice on what you think, and I value your advice for that matter, on how we should proceed forward on being able to, I guess, push back a little bit, because I know you well enough to know one thing. You wouldn't be walking away from something that you care so much about and have made such a difference on unless this was, you weren't sending a statement.
And you're exactly right. I mean, the thing is, I will hope the legislature looks at the whole policy of the SBA and watches what's going on over the state board with 6,200 and what they're trying to do. They were going to just gut 6,200, but they kind of felt it was flying in the face of the rec decision, I found out. And, you know, they were meeting in secret. I remember they wouldn't even allow the press in for one of those meetings. It was because I asked that question, why wasn't the press allowed in the 6,200 meeting? And why weren't, you know, the SBA staff involved? We weren't involved. And, you know, so it's about control. And I just told them, listen, I debated this for a long time, Craig. I thought about it because I really believe the SBA has really done good things. And we try to be more efficient with the taxpayer dollar. We really watch, and I would hope you guys ask them to just bring the whole policy so you guys can look at it and examine it. Oh yeah, it's pretty extensive. I remember we've had governors people come up and ask us. Kenny Mann, Senator Mann. I mean, down in Monroe County, I was with down in Monroe. I went down in Monroe and looked at their middle school down there, and they didn't get funded. But the thing is, that we're trying to help every county. We go and look at them all, and it's just frustrating to me that what they're trying to do is limit the access. So they, you know, you can't tell a lot by pictures. You got to go out and take a look at them. They're wanting us to let the staff tell us what, you know. I don't need to. I've been in this business. I understand school budgets. I understand, you know, when all of a sudden the architects, you go into a school, I've been in this, they said the teacher, we got $50 million, we're going to do something. What do you want done here?
Hey, Tom.
Yeah,
this is John. I noticed a little news item today from yesterday that what appeared to be a minor shakeup at the State Board of Education. Tom Campbell is no longer chair or president, whatever it is. He moved out of the way, and Dave Perry's moving up. Do you think that has anything to do with this attitude of the governor's office?
No, I think it's Dr. Payne is and Dr. Payne's a good man, but the thing is he's the governor's appointees on that board. They hired Payne. It is what it is. But let me tell you something. So Paul Espinosa is sitting there, and Craig Blair is here. I brought up the last meeting. They're doing this Nicholas County thing. We still haven't figured that out yet. I'm looking at maybe 6 years coming before that thing is ever done, because it took us 10 years to make Dow. But I brought up the issue. They're building the Votex. They're going to vocational school over there. And I asked Dr. Payne flat out, okay, we gave out some money for vocational schools. I said, what about James Rumsey? They said, what about James Rumsey? I said, you know, when we built Washington High School, they were denied being able to build a comprehensive high school over there, a vocational center, because we were part of a multi-county vocational center. And I said to them, name me one vocational center in this state that has to serve 6 AAA high schools and a AA high school. Not
Silence.
one.
Crickets, right?
So what is equal? We have 6 AAA high schools that are being served by Rumsey and Berkeley Springs High School. And our kids, and to me, that's a huge disservice. Now, have the state board ever thought about going and asking to change the legislation that will allow the comprehensive high schools in every county? Because quite frankly, Berkeley could use another one, and Jefferson could use their own.
Yes.
I mean, this is ridiculous. And they just kind of poo-poo it and, you know, and never discuss. That's the kind of things that I bring up that I get kind of frustrated with.
Final question for Tom Lange.
Well, just a comment, Tom. I think we're in agreement that we need to respect our local school boards, empower them to make decisions. Certainly, in the case of Nicholas County, while I certainly wasn't trying to weigh in either for or against that project, I really felt it was important to support Nicholas County, which again, recommended a different approach than what ultimately is being taken. And sadly, while all this is transpiring, all of this redesign and everything, we have those students that were impacted by these floods still in these mobile classrooms, trailers essentially. And it's just, it's frustrating for me. And I certainly am going to continue my efforts to really empower and respect the decision-making of our local school district.
Tom, I'm out of time. Thanks so much for yours this morning.
right.
Much appreciated.
Take
Good
care,
luck,
Tom.
folks. Craig and you guys, I'm more than happy to talk to you at length on this stuff. I'm just pretty frustrated with the whole deal down there.
Well, I
and
like
then
that.
folks coming out of the governor's office.
We'll talk again soon.
All right, you guys take care.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
947. Tom Lange on the WVU Medicine Jefferson Medical Center talk line. More to come after this.
What words come to mind when you think of Honda? Reliable should be one. Fun, that's a good one. But there is one word that sums up every Honda. Quality. Because Honda was KBB.com's 2018 best overall brand. So whether you choose the sizzling Civic, acclaimed Accord, or sporty CRV, you know you're getting quality that's unmatched.
Miller Honda south of Winchester, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. www.mymillerhonda.com.
Based on 2018 Brand Image Award from Kelly Blue Book. Visit kbb.com for more information.
L.A. Roberts is Berkeley County's oldest jeweler, where every season is new and exciting. In fact, new is old school to us, and though it's nothing new, our old traditions like exceptional service, quality, and value maintain L.A. Roberts Jewelers as the old master among so many new kids on the block. Whether you're a newcomer or part of the old guard, entrust all your fine jewelry needs to L.A. Roberts, Old World Jewelers for a new age, in historic downtown Martinsburg.
Since 1877, Farmers and Mechanics Insurance Companies have proudly supported our local community. Farmers and Mechanics has the insurance products to meet your needs, including home, auto, farm, dwelling fire, business owners, and umbrella coverage. Please contact your local independent agency for a review of your insurance needs and ask for a policy from the company that knows you best. Farmers and Mechanics Insurance Companies, just off Edwin Miller Boulevard on Administrative Drive in Martinsburg. FMIWV.com.
Downtown Martinsburg is the place to be for the Fridays at 5 Summer Concert Series from June 1st through August 31st. Enjoy great music and fun with well-known musicians, bands, and Martinsburg artists that'll liven up your spirits at the town square. Concerts begin at 5 p.m. and usually last until 7. Enjoy great music while visiting Martinsburg's Farmers Market, housed on East King Street, where you're able to enjoy fresh fruits and veggies, chicken and pork, and a lot more. Pets are allowed in the square during the concerts, provided they're on a 6-foot leash or less. For the full concert Summer Series lineup, go to MainStreetMartinsburg.com.
The best bargains in baseball are back at Nationals Park in 2018, now with new, lower pricing. Purchase a special Bud and Baseball ticket and get a free 16-ounce draft beer. Families can save too with Harris Teeter Family Fun Packs. Each pack features a game ticket and a free meal combo, which includes a hot dog, chips, and a drink. Both special offers start at $20 and are available online only. For these and other great values, check out our ticket deals at nationals.com.
Welcome back to the program. This final segment of Eastern Panhandle Talk with Rob and Dave, the Friday crew, brought to you this time around by Miller Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, Route 9 east of Martinsburg, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty. In studio with me today, as Mr. Welch is vacationing, is State Senate Finance Chair Craig Blair, House Education Committee Chairman Paul Espinosa, and candidates for the House of Delegates John Doyle and Sammi Brown. Our number with open lines right now through the top of the hour, 263-6540 and 304-263-6586. I'm going to throw one thing out before I kind of back up a little bit here, and that is we've certainly made a big deal out of the nearly $1 million paid for rent for the building that the state hasn't used since late in 2015. But the replacement of Paul Hill with Carolyn Long and a duplication of salary over the next 5 months amounts to more than that $1 million in wasted salary. It amounts to about $1.2 million in wasted salary, which is more than the money we paid to rent a space we don't use. This should get as much attention as the wasted space, right or wrong?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it does. And sadly, there's a lot of folks, including myself, who believe that the HEPC over time needs to have a different role. There's a lot of folks that would just assume see the HEPC go away. Dr. Gee, and I don't want to speak for Dr. Gee, but he's made it very clear to me, he has very little use for the HEPC. We in House Bill 2815, we essentially exempted WVU, Marshall, and the osteopathic school from much of their oversight anyway. But still, I think he'd very much like it to go away. I think these type of things, these decisions by the HEPC, just add to the calls to perhaps just eliminate them altogether. And I think the concern about that is there are some smaller schools that I think really benefit from what the HEPC can provide. Joint services, for example, legal services. While Shepherd and the larger schools have their own attorneys, they have in many cases have their own HR folks. A lot of the smaller schools don't. So this type of wasteful spending, I think, unfortunately, will just, in my estimations, just going to hasten the demand to perhaps let's just do away with the HEPC. And I think it's going to be to the detriment of some of our smaller schools that need their services.
That would be a serious mistake. It's just simply eliminate the HEPC without finding some kind of mechanism to replace it. The purpose of the HEPC, and I think it was a mistake to give so much autonomy to some institutions. The purpose of the HEPC when it was constructed about 25 years ago or so was to act as a referee among the institutions to keep them from trying to cannibalize each other. And there was a study by the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems, which just came out about a week ago, funded in part by, there's this, somebody give me the name, the nonprofit up in Pittsburgh that goes around funding studies of higher education. Well, anyway, the Benedum Foundation. One of the things they found was that many of the smaller four-year institutions think that WVU is cannibalizing them. And they're allowed to do so because of the autonomy granted to them from the HEPC. You've got to, every state has some kind of entity that acts as a referee to keep the schools from cannibalizing each other. These institutions should not feel like they're competitors to each other. They should be collaborating with each other to improve higher education in West Virginia.
Well, I don't oppose some healthy competition. I mean, if you have WVU that can provide a program more efficiently, and we do have limited tax dollars that are available for higher education, I think it behooves us to try to spend those as wisely as possible.
But you can't let each institution just say, "I'm going to do this program in so and so's backyard."
Well, in House Bill 2815, we build in some protections that does require WVU and some of those smaller institutions in their neighborhood. Well, WVU Tech, I meant to say, which is in Beckley, and some of the other schools like Concord and Bluefield. House Bill 2815 does require them to coordinate with the HEPC, in the offering of programs. So I think there are some protections built in there. But to Rob's point, I think when we see this kind of wasteful spending, it's very difficult for folks like me who believe there is a role for the HEPC or an HEPC type body going forward. It's very difficult for us to defend, that type of wasteful spending, and we may end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, and we would waste a lot more money if we did away with the HEPC.
Keep in mind, this isn't taking place with the legislature. The legislature, this is the executive and his cohorts of managing this.
It'd be Governor Justice, you're saying.
And January will roll around again, and we will. I think that you'll see something addressed into the future on this.
And those folks are those members as essentially all governor appointees. They must be confirmed by the Senate. So I think the Senate's not going to forget some of what's transpired here recently. The next time appointments come around for that HEPC board or some of these other boards.
I'm guessing that's what Craig was implying right there.
I think it was. In no uncertain terms.
At least part of it.
Exactly. And you have consequences to undermine legislative intent, no matter who it is. And that is probably what's burning in more of our minds than anything is what has taken place. We actually had a report that was coming back and working with that, and this is trying to be undermining it.
And people have asked me, so what are you going to do when they finally give you a report? Are you going to listen to it if it's dramatically changed? And my very simple answer is I'll give it the weight I think it deserves, and I think other members of the legislature are going to do the same. If we don't view it as an impartial report, that's something that we can truly rely on, we're not going to give it much credence.
The framers of the Constitution of the United States.
I want to make sure Sammi gets a point in here, too.
No, I mean, it's fine. I think for me, especially since Tom kind of alluded to it when he was on the phone, is that the governor has a lot of decisions that seem to be rolling downhill at this point, and I want to know what it is that's his breadth of knowledge at this point. If it's not business, if it's not education, then what are you doing in the highest office in the land that's going to impact the people of West Virginia? And it seems there's a sincere gap of knowledge when it comes to our education system that is clearly affecting this particular institution.
What I was going to comment about what Craig said, I agree with him completely. The framers of the Constitution of the United States fully expected that each branch of government would jealously guard its own prerogatives because the system doesn't work right if they don't.
Right, and when I was talking about those reports, I'm not talking about on the Blue Ribbon Commission. There's another one that was mandated by the legislature in statute. So we're talking about two different ones there.
I understand.
And I'm protecting the one from the legislative side of it. So.
Right.
Well, from my perspective, sitting here, we're talking about nearly $1.2 million that it seems like nobody has any control over to stop being wasted right now. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah, there's somebody, and that is the governor's office.
Well, exactly.
Right now, they're the ones that
But he's the one behind the wasting of it.
That's exactly right, so he owns that.
But there's no one else who can stop it, is what I'm saying. From my perspective, looking at this, you've got a person who makes a decision to waste over $1,100,000, and nobody can stop it.
That's truly my point, which is you're mismanaging the government in which you are leading at this point. So who is it that's going to hold this man accountable? And where is his breadth of knowledge? What is it that he's actually good at?
All right, time for final thoughts here. Let's get them going. 10 seconds apiece. Craig Blair, final thought.
Stormy Daniels tomorrow night.
You stole my final thought.
Paul, yes, she's in town, I understand. Paul Espinosa.
A lot of these events are not of our choosing, but we're dealing with them, and we're going to get to the bottom of it and get it cleaned up.
John Doyle.
All four of us are going to go to see Stormy Daniels either tonight or tomorrow.
When you say all four, you're including Sammi, you, Paul, and Craig, right?
Yes.
I guess I'm going tonight. Woo!
John, are you going to pay the cover?
It's on John's tab.
Hey, coming up next is the Glenn Beck program. Matt Miller's in for me next week. Thank you so much for listening. You can check out the replay on YouTube. This is Talk Radio WRNR Martinsburg. Have a great day.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by TerraWorks Relief.
I'm Deborah Rodriguez. What a difference a day makes.
Whatever you're going to do is okay with us. Just make sure we can trade together. That's all that matters.
President Trump at a joint news conference with the British Prime Minister. Last night, the Sun newspaper released a recorded interview with the president's critique of Theresa May's Brexit negotiations.
I told her how to do it. She just said she wanted to go a different route.
Mr. Trump dismissed reporting on his comments, says fake news, and went on to talk about Monday's summit with Russia's Vladimir Putin.
I know you'll ask, will we be talking about meddling? And I will absolutely bring that up. I don't think you'll have any, gee, I did it, you got me.
40 miles away from the Prime Minister's country home, protesters packed the British capital. Correspondent Steve Futterman.
Thousands of people here on the streets of London, just outside Trafalgar Square right now. They are carrying